We love a familiar melody.
And when it's tied to a memory, our whole body responds. We feel the rush of endorphins as our minds take us back to the stories that have formed us. This is true of fictional stories and personal ones. We recall the people and the places, and we just can't help but feel connected again. Take a fan favorite from Harry Potter, Neville Longbottom, brave Gryffindor hero. If you're entering this conversation from the movies only, he's a boy that has a surprising growth spurt mid-film series that matches perfectly his character's arc. It's easy to look at the totality of the story now and be a Neville Longbottom fan, but at the grueling days of one book release at a time, young Neville was, well, playing second fiddle. He takes 4 book releases to actually show us even an inkling of his potential. But that would change. Like our real-time experience of Neville, our stories are incomplete. But too often, we struggle to share our stories as they are now, because we are afraid that if we tell our stories now, that we will have to admit that they may never resolve. When we deny the worth of our own stories, we miss out on a better understanding of ourselves. We miss out on the ways our stories intersect with others, and we deny the fact that our stories just aren't linear. I think we struggle to tell our stories because, well, sometimes even reflect on our even personal narratives at all, because it's uncomfortable to admit when we're caught in a liminal space, caught in the in-between. It's that space where you're in the unfamiliar. You've left a job, a city, a relationship, but where the next step is, it's hazy. We want to know what we believe, where we belong, and we want to know that our lives have meaning, that everything that happens around us and to us matters. That is not what we get in a liminal space, only disorienting dissonance. There is little else more disorienting than the deconstructing of beliefs and the slipping away of a community that once held us close. For those who've experienced this again and again, it feels a little bit like putting your hand on a hot stove. You would think surely we would learn to walk alone. But it's our human desire for connection. When we are unpacking revelations about ourselves, about our culture, our heritage, we look for people that believe in the things that we believe in, that make us feel safe because they might understand it too, or maybe they're just willing to listen. We want to hold on when we find those people because it makes us feel good, and then we think, surely we can make it last forever. And on occasion, we do find those people that stay with us our whole lives. Yet our tendency is to want to hold on so tightly that we can't hold on anymore and grow at the same time. Meanwhile, our stories are waiting to be written, waiting to be told. Then what's the point of seeking belonging? What's the point of making connections? What's the point of forming communities? Will our stories always be ones of dissonance? Well, I am not a fan of that idea at all. My parents used to tell me that I would absolutely come unglued if they moved a piece of furniture. That is just a very small example of how I've handled change in my life. I won't even make you wish you were a fly on the wall at my therapy session. I'll just tell you what would happen. Blah, blah, blah. Fear. Blah, blah. Resistance to change. Bleckety bleck. Trust issues. But there's something else you should know about me. I love big. I go all in. I'm fiercely loyal. And before you think that's noble, I will do anything to hold a group together. But what's really happening is that I'm trying to control the narrative so that I can abate my fear that if something were to change, because a lot of times I've overstayed my welcome because I don't want to engage in my own story. Having a tendency to know that it's time to go, it's time to move on, that the journey ahead waits for me. But I don't want to know what's there. When I finally do, when I finally move on, I have a really hard time integrating that part of my story into the grander narrative of my story, because all that I can feel and see and remember is the disappointment and the pain. But that's not belonging. That's not true belonging. Belonging is a measure of how we treat each other in the moment. It is a place and a feeling of safety and inclusivity. It's a place you feel secure enough to share who you are and who you aspire to be. Rarely is it a permanent place. That can be both heartbreaking and free. We will go through life knowing many places of belonging. On and on we go, growing and changing, knowing many places and people of belonging. We become more and more aware of our story as part of a grander story. So what do we do when we don't feel like we belong? What do we do when we feel untethered? And we're willing to sit with the discomfort of not belonging for a season long enough to discover who it is we are becoming. The liminal space is not a well-lit path. But I can tell you this: there is growth in the journey. It's as corny and cliche and true as that. It may mean furniture has to change. Give it a chance. Sit there a while, even if it's uncomfortable. It will give you a different perspective. Listen to other people's stories. It's both humbling and inspiring to know how much we have in common and yet how different we are. It is transforming to hold someone's story. When we make connections in our stories with open hearts, not trying to control the ending, that's what makes a great story. It's a place like Hogwarts that isn't necessarily safe. It's not comfortable or without loss. But it's a place where you can discover your strength, your resiliency, your gifts, who you're meant to be in this world. It means you're brave enough to crash into a brick wall at a train station with people who aren't yet your people, but you go for it anyway. That's the beginning of belonging. That's the beginning of writing our own stories. Some of my favorite songs have the most well-placed dissonance. And that is what makes them intriguingly beautiful.